Hi folks, Canadian Prepper here, back again with a daily dose of doom and gloom. Some very critical information to share with you here. Seymour Hersh has come out with a warning about how the conflict is about to inflect over the drone incident, and we need to talk about it. According to his sources, revealed to him that there is a plan B that is currently in the works, okay? Now, we're also, of course, going to be talking about the bubble that has popped. If you haven't realized it yet, we're there. This is the financial collapse. Now, the rate of deflation of air from the bubble is variable. Nobody knows how quickly it's going to pan out. Things could rapidly spiral out of control in the next week, or it could be a little bit more long-winded. One thing is for sure, that the dominoes probably were starting to fall back in April of 2021. That's probably when it happened. After Wall Street bets, that might be the point in history where things just started going bad or weird, okay? But now it's really starting to fall. Last Saturday, I told you that Credit Suisse very well might be the next bank that went underwater, and it appears as though that might be happening this week. I say might be. This is a big, too big to fail bank, 1.5 trillion in assets under management. If this one goes down, guys, it may well set a chain reaction off. And at that point in time, you really need to have your bets hedged, and especially if you're in Canada, where they only insure to the tune of $100,000, and that's Canadian dollars. In the States, they do $250. The FDIC in Canada, the CDIC, is only $100,000 worth of coverage in most of the banks, okay? So that means if you have more money than that, if you're one of the fortunate ones, then you should be considering spreading that around just a little bit. There were already rumblings over the weekend that TD might be in some hot water, but I guess we'll see how things pan out. I don't want to make any predictions about the Canadian banking system, but I will say that before we get into the Seymour Hersh World War III stuff, that precious metals, we've been saying it for the longest time. Back when all the Bitcoin fanboys were saying, no, this is it, this is it. We were saying, if you want to preserve your wealth, it's gold, it's precious metals. It's the best way to do it after you have all your preps, of course. That's the number one. Have your staple preps, everything you need, your basic needs, food, water, shelter, medical supplies. Then after, if you're still trying to retain some of your wealth, the money that you've saved, that you've poured your blood, sweat, and tears into to get, if you don't want that to be devalued, debased, and depreciated, you need to put it into something. And nothing has stood the test of time like gold and precious metals. And you don't get into it to make money. And this is why I almost intrinsically trust people more who are gold bugs. I mean, I understand that the gold market gets manipulated a lot, and there's a lot of people trying to sell you gold. I get that. But one thing I will say is that you never get into gold to make money. You get into gold to preserve the value of that money. And that in itself is the mark of an honest person to some extent. Anyways, the first gold that I ever purchased online, the first combi bar I ever purchased, was through silvergoldbull.ca. Okay, it was just the most secure, legit looking website that I had ever seen. And that's where I've had good experiences. The premiums seem okay. They got silver, they got copper. If you're wanting something a bit more affordable, silver's still fairly well priced. It has a lot of industrial applications, and it's going to be in great demand in the future, in the photovoltaic future, if we can get through this World War III stuff. And they got everything there. I think they got platinum, palladium, which is out of stock, but it's good to have something in your hands. Possession is 9/10 of the law. Okay, so you can go and check that out. Now, Seymour Hersh has warned of a potential plan B in Ukraine. And of course, the drone incident that a lot of people are saying, it's just a drone, not a big deal, Nate. Yeah, I know it's a drone. It happens to be worth around $30 million, was designed for the purpose of hunter-killer operations, putting missiles on and taking out large amounts of people. That's what these things are used for. In this particular instance, of course, it was basically the tip of the spear. Okay, it was being used for intelligence gathering, recon, and surveillance for what may well be operations that are going to happen in either Crimea or other parts of Ukraine. That is what it is there for. Make no mistake, it's not just there to survey the topography and take nature photos and stuff like that. Come on. I mean, there's some people who are that disingenuous on here. Look, if you're going to support the Ukraine NATO initiative in Ukraine, then do so. Do so openly. Admit as to why this thing was there, but don't hide behind this thing like this technicality that it was international airspace, and that's like the equivalent of, you know, going up when you're a kid, you know, and bugging some other kid and putting your finger right in their face and saying, I'm not touching you, you can't get me in trouble. That's the equivalent. Okay, so just understand that this was clear-cut provocation. Now, according to Seymour Hersh, he indicates that I don't know what happens if it goes bad for Ukraine. You have all this manpower, he said, pointing out that the U.S. has dispatched units of its 82nd and 101st Elite Airborne Divisions. They've been there for some time now, just out of Romania, near the Ukrainian border. And a lot of weapons and arms are coming into Europe, as we've shown on the channel in the past couple weeks. I'm told the game is going to be as follows. It's going to be, this is NATO's operation. We are supporting NATO in offensive operations against the Russians, which is not going to fool the world, he says. It's going to be the U.S. fighting the Russians. Hersh stressed this without disclosing his sources. According to Hersh, the big deal is that Russian President Vladimir Putin is ready to come to an agreement with the Ukrainian government. The deal is demilitarize, and it's going to be a no-go for us. He said that the Russian leader has not put in his main force yet into the conflict, and he's just waiting for this sort of final breakdown of communications to happen to commit. So it's looking as though that this was a clear-cut provocation, and here's the problem, guys, is right now the Russians have said that not only are we going to continue to monitor this airspace and exact this no-fly zone over the Black Sea, but we're actually going to expand the no-fly zone. Now, what has the United States said in response to this? Well, they've basically doubled down, okay? They say, make no mistake, we're going to continue to fly and operate wherever international law allows, right? They're going to keep pointing the finger at that one kid that is just going to go postal someday. Now, and postal, unfortunately, when you're Russia, means you have nuclear weapons and you can trigger nuclear Armageddon. But that is what's going to happen. You have a lot of very, very hawkish people now who are already saying, let's just start shooting Russian planes down. What could go wrong, Lindsey Graham? Lindsey Graham has suggested opening fire on Russian jets that intercept U.S. drones. Now, I know what some people are thinking. Some people are saying, this is all just theatrics to take attention away from the collapsing financial system. And in fact, the person I interviewed yesterday, Lynette Zhang, said that, you know, what we're going to see now unfold until the whole bubble just flat out pops is, or fully deflates, I should say, because it's already popped, is crisis after crisis after crisis. Okay, and it's almost like we're in a crisis economy now. So, well, I can kind of understand that perspective. I don't just think it's a distraction. In fact, I think these things are integral. Just like body, mind, and spirit, it's integral. You can't have one without the other, okay? Now, what I mean by that is yesterday I talked about how all Treasury bonds, if you are the issuer of the global reserve currency, are effectively war bonds. Why? Because Treasury bonds are supposed to be the most secure investment you can make, backed up by the government. They're supposed to, at the very least, hold their nominal value. Okay? When they don't do that, that means that the system is failing. And the only way you get to become the issuer of global reserve currency is if you have the guns to back it up. It all boils down to who is the most superior military fighting force on the planet. Once you relinquish that role, you cease to be, by definition, because you are less secure. Okay, this is why I said yesterday, the Russians and the Chinese, they benefit from having a global reserve currency. They just don't want it to be the people they're fighting with. Okay, when that global reserve currency runs out of places to conquer and they start infringing on them because, of course, it's a infinite debt bubble that needs to keep inflating. So we need to keep, expanding the military-industrial complex and all the rest, which is why the military budget is $1 trillion, almost the exact amount that we're in a deficit. I say we, the United States, are in a deficit this year. Okay. Meanwhile, these banks are failing. Okay, and you're continuing to send money. People are saying, well, why are they doing this? Why are we sending so much money to Ukraine? Because everything rides on it. And I've said this for the longest time. You can't look at these two things in isolation. Okay, you got to be a polymath when it comes to understanding how all the pieces fit together. There is no separation in my mind between how finance works and how war works. These things are integral. They're interconnected. Okay, and to understand how one works, you have to understand how the other works. So right now, as it stands, Treasury bonds are war bonds. If we lose the war, the financial system collapses. So while it might just be a little bit of a distraction in some ways to take attention away from the failing Credit Suisse and all that stuff, maybe that's part of it. But make no mistake that if we lose this conflict and people start to see weakness in the United States, other people are going to act. They will act, and they're going to act quicker than we already know they're going to act. And of course, I'm talking about China, and the dominoes are just going to continue to fall. This is why you need to establish full spectrum dominance, okay? Because all it takes is a little spark here and a little spark there, and all of a sudden you got fires everywhere that you can't put out, no matter how powerful you think your military is, all right? What was I talking about? So yes, this was one of the first times in many, many months that they had to have a deconfliction call, okay? And the last time this happened, and I'm talking about Lloyd Austin and Sergei Shoigu, the defense ministers of the US and Russia respectively, they had to do this was during the claims by the Russians that the Ukrainians were planning to do some sort of nuclear dirty bomb incident. That's when Shoigu was phoning everybody back in November and putting out the word that they're planning this, and we want you to know that if they go ahead with it, it's going to be a big problem. Of course, that didn't happen. Big surprise, right? Now, this is the other deconfliction call that has happened, and on this deconfliction call, although they made it out to be this really amicable exchange, it really wasn't, because the Russians have now said we're expanding our airspace, and the Americans have doubled down and said we're going to fly probably more of these missions, and we may even accompany, and this is from a former retired general who said this part, he said that we may even have to accompany these surveillance drones with either attack drones or manned aircraft. So yes, well, this MQ-9 Reaper drone was just a reconnaissance information gathering drone. It's a $30 million war machine. It's for the sole purpose of potentially aiding and abetting a Ukrainian invasion into Crimea or wherever else. So this is how the Russians are going to view it. So these things are one and the same. So all I'm saying is own up to it. Okay, the first part, it's not like good guys and bad guys. I know a lot of people are like of this really stupid belief that we're the good guys and we can never do anything bad. No, we're actually, everybody's got a little bit of asshole in them, and we need to realize that. You need to own up when you're being the asshole. Okay? If you believe that that's a cause you're fighting for, at least own up to it. Don't hide behind these BS technicalities and then get all mad when something happens, when the kid slaps you back. Come on. So Russia is also about to recruit another 400,000 contract soldiers. 400,000. And, this is the thing, when you get into dire economic times, no matter where it is in the world, and people are desperate and they need a job, and they know they can get 3 hots and a cot and maybe a cool gun and some cool gear to put on, they're going to do it, even if it means probably meeting their death at some point. The Wagner Group, the private contracted military group in Russia, is opening many recruitment centers around. Now, apparently, the mobilization drive is still ongoing. It's just happening under the radar. Officially, it's been suspended, but there's been no legal decree issued by Putin suspending the mobilization. So the mobilization of the Russians is still ongoing. And like Seymour Hersh said, and this is what a lot of people have been saying for the longest time, the people who are doing the fighting right now, you've had the Chechens, They were the primary fighting force in Mariupol. Of course, they had the fire support from the Russian military and artillery. And the same thing with the Wagner. They're doing like a lot of the grunt work on the ground. Now, why is it that this 1.5 million strong Russian army, you're not really hearing so much about how they are that involved in this conflict yet? That's because they're holding those guys in reserve because they know the shit's about to hit the fan. The Wagner leader said the other day, if you join now, if you are one of these 400,000 that join now, maybe we'll make you a sergeant. Maybe we'll make you an officer. Okay, maybe you'll get a nice spot at the table. And he said this explicitly when World War III starts. Okay, if you can't see what's going on right now, I mean, you know, just the financial system made it all too clear as to what's truly happening. And it just showed me, clear as day how both of these things are intertwined. And the problem with a lot of finance channels, who of course they're always trying to sell you these finance courses, is they're always separating these things. You cannot separate war and finance. These things are like this. Understand that whenever you hear stuff about, the failing markets, and on the same day you hear something about war escalating in some place, there is no war but resource war, okay? And that has been the same all throughout history, and it's only going to get more intense as we approach resource and energy scarcity. Now, there's also been a Russian spy network that has been allegedly broken up in Poland. Now, why this is important? Because they say that these guys were getting to sabotage, guess what? Railways, rail networks. They had cameras, apparently. So the hybrid war is being waged. Now, this, of course, is significant in light of all the railway stuff that's been going on. Now, accidents happen. The U.S. infrastructure is complete shite. Okay, if you compare it to everywhere else in the world, it's garbage because we've neglected it for so long because we're too busy building aircraft carriers, okay? And the same thing in Canada. I mean, these cities and towns in Canada are just dilapidated crap holes, half of them, to be brutally honest. And it's embarrassing that we live in this first world country and our cities and towns look like this. Like in Saskatchewan, it's like half of it's a ghost town. Anyways, so it makes you wonder, it makes you wonder if there were similar things happening here, because we know that similar things have happened in Russia. So this means, of course, that this increases the likelihood that Poland is going to want to participate in the upcoming NATO, don't say United States, say NATO, offensive, operation, entanglement. Isn't that what Jada Pinkett calls it, an entanglement? I had a little entanglement in Ukraine. Oh boy. Where to go from here? Zelensky has fired the heads of 3 regional state administrators. Yes, it's not looking good. Luhansk, Odessa, and another name of an oblast I cannot pronounce. Khmelnytsky, something to that effect. Anyways, there's always somebody getting fired, either in the high-ranking officers in the military or these administrators of these various regions, mayors. So something's going on. The war isn't going that well. There is rumors that the Ukrainians are getting ready to do a 40,000 strong offensive in Bakhmut. There's something about Bakhmut. Like I say, I don't know if it's the, what do they call them? The lines, the topographical, geographical lines of latitude and longitude, that there's some kind of energy to that place. Maybe there's some secret in those tunnels. Okay, this is a subterranean war. And there's parts of Bakhmut that are just completely, like it looks like Hiroshima. And so the war is going on underneath the ground. Something's going on in there. Is there gold? Is there, who knows what's going on in Bakhmut. But they want this place. Is it just a meat grinder? Or both sides chasing a Pyrrhic victory? It's hard to say. But that's where it looks like they're going to make their stand. They're going to make their stand there. However, it could just be misdirection because they're really going for a Crimea. And maybe they were seeing how this drone thing would pan out, but clearly this was a provocation. You don't turn your transponder off after being tracked in the Black Sea for weeks on end, like we've been able to do on flight radar. And yes, military vehicles are on flight radar all the time. It's all a part of strategic deterrence, is showing the other side where you are and what you're going to do. You turn your transponders off, that's when it goes to DEFCON 2, because they don't know where you are and what you're doing. So yeah, they turned the transponder off, according to the Russians. The Russians likely brought it down with some kind of electronic warfare of some sort. Who knows what they actually did? Of course, it was drunken Boris who spilled gasoline on it, or jet fuel or whatever. That's what the media is saying. Guys, if you haven't realized it by now, that we're going to be lied to up until the last moment, okay? Right up until the bitter end. If you haven't realized that by now. And I know it's hard. I know, because it's so even myself, you know, I look for validation on the legacy networks because they're all synced up. They're all in unison. They're like gas prices. All of a sudden, you know, at the same time, they're all saying the same thing. And it seems so official. And how could it ever be untrue? How could they ever be lying to us this time? Right? Yeah. No, it's it, man. This is it. This is it. Like, this is it. This is the collapse. This is very much the collapse. So just keep on prepping, keep on doing what you're doing, but love life, love your family. Don't sit there and just wait for the end of the world. Get out there, challenge yourself, have fun, go on vacations, but just have an escape plan, have a backup plan. And I'll tell you when it's time to not go on vacations. Not that I'm here to tell you what to do, but I will tell you when I'm not going on vacation. That's a better way to put it. I want to thank you guys again. We crossed the 1 million sub mark. I didn't have any time to get into the studio and do the whole interactive map thing today. I don't want you guys to think it's gone to our heads already and we're already resting on our laurels or anything around here. That's not the case. In fact, we just went out and shot a couple really fun videos today. I'm going to keep treating this like I have 10 subs or I have 100 subs. Because the day you let it go to your head, the day you start believing your own bullshit is the day you die, you know, and there's got to be a fight to this, okay? So you're never going to see me in silk sheets. You're never going to see me, you know, start living high on the hog. You know, if I could, I would just live in a little tiny home in the woods, to be brutally honest. That's all I need to be happy. Yeah, the Tesla's fun to drive. Don't get me wrong. The Tesla's fun to drive. It was a great tax write-off. But, you know, at the end of the day, all you need is friends and family, because, you know, somebody made a comment yesterday on the channel about how they have stage 4 cancer and they're not going to be able to see the crap hitting the fan. And, you know, all I can say is I wish you the best of luck in your challenges that you have. And this is why it's very important that you just live every day to the fullest. Understand, we are in a very, very epic, changing, pivotal moment in history, but that doesn't mean that you need to stop living your life and just trying to do good things for people and stay honest, okay? Thanks for watching, folks. Take care. Canadian Prepper out.